Welcome back to First Issues. In the last installment of the program, we were talking about the importance of actually owning your vehicle and not doing so through financial institution financing. Our guest, SCI Wealth Managing Director James Fern, said his rule of thumb when purchasing a car is getting one that is worth 6 times your monthly income after tax. Anything above that is too expensive. Tonight, our conversation is on how to set up an emergency fund. What is an emergency fund? James, we're back. Today we're talking about the fourth rule. We're onto the fourth rule, that's an emergency fund. What is an emergency fund and how does one set it up?
Remember rule 1.
Pay yourself first.
Pay yourself first. Rule 2. Say no to bad debt. Yeah. Rule 3.
Own your vehicle.
Own your own vehicle. Stop renting it from the bank. Yeah. Rule 4. Okay. Now we're on the start to actually sort of building some wealth for ourselves. All right. So our company, SCI Wealth, is a firm of investment advisors. Yeah. And we have people come to us and say, James, where should I invest? Now, before you start investing anywhere, you need to sort out your personal finances. And the first part of sorting out your personal finances is get out of debt and then start an emergency fund. So the emergency fund does 2 things. Number 1, it stops you going into debt. Yeah, stops you relapsing. Yeah. And number 2, it gives you a level of comfort. Because when you start investing money, investments tend to be for the medium to long term. They tend to fluctuate in value and they can involve risk. So an emergency fund needs to be earning you interest, needs to be growing, but it needs to be really low risk.
James says a form of investment with the lowest risk that one can consider when wanting to set up an emergency fund is a money market fund that will allow you to have access to the money to deal with financial emergencies.
The lowest risk form of investment in Botswana is called a money market fund. And these are worldwide. Almost every country has these things called money market funds. And so you put your emergency fund into a money market fund and you have access to it, but it's not easy to spend. All right. So we go back to rule 1, pay yourself first. So you choose a percentage of your income. Let's say you choose 10%, which is my guideline for when you're starting out. So let's say you earn 5,000 pula. 10% is 500 pula. Yeah. So you're going to say, as soon as I get paid, I'm going to take my 500 pula and I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to put it into a money market fund, is what I'd recommend. You're welcome to use a savings account. Yeah? But money market funds tend to pay a little bit more than a savings account. Okay. So the emergency fund is there for you in the event of an emergency. That emergency might come at the end of a month, a particularly stressful month. No, I haven't got enough to do the grocery shopping to feed the kids. Great, well, I'm going to pull a little bit down out of my emergency fund. I'm going to borrow from myself. And hopefully, start of the next month, I'm going to pay myself back with a bit of interest. Thanks, future self. Yeah, thanks for bailing me out there. Have a bit of extra money. Okay. Now, what's the biggest emergency? Generally a healthcare emergency. Yeah? So, yes, please get on a medical aid scheme. You know, there are several medical aid schemes. Choose the one that suits you best. But if you're not on a medical aid scheme and you suddenly need some medicine, you need to pay for that. Where are you going to get that money from? You're going to get that money from your emergency fund.
James adds that in setting up your emergency fund, you must always take into account that you might lose your income unexpectedly by way of retrenchment, for example. In this case, your emergency fund must be able to sustain you for at least 3 months while you look for another job.
What's the second biggest emergency? Losing your job. Right? Let's say your employer closes down, and says, I'm sorry, I'm going to lay everybody off. Where are you going to get the money to survive from the end of this job to the start of the next? Well, you're going to get it from your emergency fund. So my guideline for the amount that you need in an emergency fund is 3 months' money, 3 months of your spending. Yeah? If you've got 3 months of your spending put aside in an emergency fund and it's earning you some interest in the savings account or in the money market fund, great. If you don't need it, fantastic, it's working for you. But now you're out of a job, okay. You need to get out there straight away to try and find that job. Yeah, you haven't been given a free holiday. Yeah? You need to treat finding a job like a job. Work at it 8 till 5. Work on your CV. Get it out there to as many employers as possible. Research companies. Go see people. Yeah? If you work on it 8 till 5, you'll have another job in a month. Yeah? But if you've got 3 months' money there, you know that you're not going to have a disaster. You know your kids aren't going to go hungry. Yeah? So the emergency fund is the first building block, and it covers a whole load of other benefits as well. Let's say you pay money into a funeral scheme. Well, the money you pay in for funeral insurance is wasted until you die. Let's say you've got your emergency fund. Well, that emergency fund could pay for your funeral if you die, couldn't it? Yeah. All right. So you can get rid of that expense of the funeral insurance. Maybe. Yeah? And you could be saving that money for yourself. Funeral insurance is only good for one thing. Money market, savings account, emergency fund is good for a whole wealth of things. Okay, so rule number 4 is your first step on the road to actually building wealth for yourself is put the emergency fund in place.